Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Most, if not all of them, say they'd go back to work tomorrow if they could.
As BC grapples with a paramedic shortage, the calls for a rule change to bring unvaccinated workers back. Plus, another blow as more big names cut ties with Hockey Canada.
How can I get the most out of my loyalty points?
And changing the way you shop as food prices skyrocket. How British Columbians are making it work.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. As BC grapples with ambulance shortages, a group of unvaccinated paramedics say they want to go back to work but can't. A number of other provinces have rescinded the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers, but as John Hernandez reports, BC is showing no signs of changing course.
Put us back to work. People are literally dying in the streets waiting for ambulances.
This isn't Nathan Davis's favorite job, but right now the former paramedic's options are limited.
For 8.5 years, I had put in so much time and effort.
Last fall, he was terminated by the BC Ambulance Service after deciding not to get vaccinated. A big loss for a community short on medics.
For probably 2 months after I was terminated, I was still receiving text messages from scheduling, crying out for help. That's just Vernon and Kelowna area.
BC's vaccine mandate for health workers was enacted last fall. The ambulance union says the vast majority of its 4,500 members complied, while about 80 people lost their jobs.
We lobbied the government and the PHSO and the Employers Bargaining Association to not terminate those employees, and unfortunately they said they were not wavering on those decisions.
With the end of the pandemic seemingly in sight, provinces including Alberta, Saskatchewan and Manitoba have rescinded vaccine mandates for health workers. Quebec and Ontario never introduced them. But BC is holding firm, citing concerns over increased transmission in the fall and winter. A position that's proven frustrating for those on the outside, watching as BC grapples with a mounting ambulance shortage.
I'm part of a group of about 40 to 50 paramedics. We talk almost daily, and most, if not all of them, say they'd go back to work tomorrow if they could.
They are petitioning the government to change course, saying a return to work could mean dozens more ambulances on BC roads. But the union admits it's not that simple.
What risk does that put on our patients or other paramedics if we're not vaccinated?
And it still won't solve major staffing shortages province-wide.
Right now, we have more significant issues in the province as a profession and union.
Still, union leaders have filed grievances against the province on behalf of those who have lost their jobs in hopes of getting them back on the road. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canada's highest court is restoring a second-degree murder conviction against a BC man found guilty of killing a Japanese exchange student in 2016. The High Court is overturning a decision that ordered a new trial for William Schneider after his conviction for the slaying of 30-year-old student Natsumi Kogawa. Her body was found inside a suitcase on the grounds of an empty Vancouver mansion. The appeal focused on a conversation where Schneider's brother overheard him admitting to the murder. Today's decision found the trial judge was correct to admit that conversation. The parole board ordered Schneider to remain in custody during his appeal process, noting his lack of remorse was concerning. Well, a man has been arrested in connection with an incident at the Strawberry Hill Plaza parking lot last month in Surrey. RCMP say a group of men swarmed an officer's police cruiser. Now, along with the one arrested, the public is being asked to help identify 2 more suspects. Isabel Regam is live with us. Isabel, that incident was captured on camera. Tell us what happened.
Anita, the appeal from police to help identify the 2 suspects comes 3 weeks after videos were posted to social media showing the confrontation that took place between a group of men and a police officer. Take a look now. According to police, on September 11th, the officer was surrounded by a group of men after he served a violation ticket. The video starts with the officer throwing the ticket at a man, but it doesn't show what happens before. RCMP say the officer was responding to a complaint received from an on-site security guard that a vehicle with an extremely loud and disruptive exhaust system had been unnecessarily driving around the lot and causing a disturbance for 3 hours. Today, police say a 22-year-old man has been arrested for intimidation and obstruction of a peace officer.
Majority of the community that have reached out to us have told us that they do not accept this behavior of this group. This is not how our society works. I can speak to Surrey.
Police say they are looking for 2 suspects, both described as South Asian men in their mid to late 20s, with these photos released of the pair. The 22-year-old man who was arrested has since been released with a future court date, and he was given conditions, which includes not going to the Strawberry Hill complex. Anita.
Isabel Regan reporting live for us tonight. Thank you, Isabel. A terrifying accident on the ironworkers this afternoon. A truck is believed to have lost its load heading over the bridge, dropping a large metal beam onto the deck. It bounced and impaled the windshield of a car, narrowly missing a mother and her child. Police say it was a miracle nobody was seriously hurt. They're trying to identify the truck driver, along with dash cam footage, and anyone who was on the bridge between 1:50 and 2 p.m. is asked to call police. Well, one of Canada's most prolific romance scammers is behind bars tonight. And as the CBC's Chris Glover reports, a Kelowna woman says she was one of many victims.
The man Andrea Speranza alleges tricked her into loving him and swindled her out of $5,000 is tonight behind bars in Quebec.
In the end, I lost $5,000, but there's over 20 victims and many have lost over 100,000. So I'm lucky.
The Halifax woman launched an online community, and with the help of media coverage, police and lawyers, she connected with alleged victims in 8 provinces, including Ontario, plus the U.S., Asia, and Europe. This Kelowna woman tells CBC News she lost $45,000 to the same man. He's become known as Canada's biggest romance scammer, but police say he's 47-year-old Andre Marcel Vatour. In 2015, Quebec's provincial police issuing this arrest warrant for him in a fraud investigation. Last month, tipping off York Regional Police that he was in Vaughan. And this past Wednesday, York's high-risk offender unit arrested him at a Markham hotel.
He was arrested and he was transported to Quebec so that the police service there could continue with the charges and the investigation.
Now charged with fraud, his bail hearing is Tuesday in Drummondville, Quebec. CBC News has reached out to his lawyer, but has yet to hear back. Police say romance scams such as this pose a unique challenge.
Unfortunately, these victims don't come forward because of embarrassment or shame. But we want to encourage that, we are here to support you.
What would you say to someone who said that they would never fall victim to a romance scam?
I would say wait to be in the right circumstances.
This McMaster University researcher says anyone can fall victim, especially when the alleged fraudster has had years of practice.
So each time they do it, they kind of accumulate more skills and more knowledge as to how to perpetrate the same kind of scam onto other people in the future.
Andrea Speranza wants more people to reach out if they've been victimized.
They'll never get back the emotional scars and devastation that they have suffered.
Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, we are just 8 days away from local elections across BC, and in the city of Vancouver, campaigning has been fierce. Our Justin McElroy has interviewed all the main candidates for mayor. Here's his breakdown of their messages to voters.
What is this election about, anyway?
I don't want to be the last generation of my family to be able to afford to live in Vancouver.
The last 4 years have been marked with missed opportunities, divisiveness, and combativeness.
We have a public safety crisis happening.
We need to be a growing city, a welcoming city, a city where young families can live.
This election's really been about poor bashing.
Vancouver is the most complicated place to vote in Canada, but the most important question is still the same. Who should be mayor of the city? And while there are 15 candidates, there are only 5 with a team around them that have a chance. Incumbent Mayor Kennedy Stewart hoping to keep his job against Ken Sim, Colleen Hardwick, Mark Marison, and Fred Harding.
We have a crisis that's evolved in the downtown east side.
A former cop in England and West Vancouver, Harding became the NPA candidate 2 months ago. There's an intense focus on getting criminals off the street, And in a 13-minute interview, he says the word crisis 16 different times.
We need a crisis level of leadership in the City Hall. We need a crisis level of leadership that's going to tackle the problems.
All the candidates talk about safety, though none as much as Harding. For the others hoping to defeat Stewart, there's other issues they mention as well.
It's all fine and good to have some good policies, but if you're not making them happen, that means that you're causing an exodus of people.
For political strategist Mark Marison, the election is about competency. It's not that Vancouver has the wrong priorities in his mind, it's that everything is done so slowly.
Surrey is welcoming people, Burnaby is welcoming people. We're not welcoming people at the rate that they are because of the fact that it takes so long to get things done.
He promises rezoning the city to allow 4-story rentals everywhere, saying it will help fix affordability issues.
Factors that we have no control over is, interest rates and, the actual price of homes. We don't have any control over that at all. But we do have control over land use. And what I would like to see is that we can have the kind of housing that would get young families back into our city.
But while Marison wants more housing, others want less.
I do my own analysis, and if I disagree with something, I will speak truth to power instead of trying to be popular.
No councillor voted more often against new housing in the city over the last 4 years than Colleen Hardwick. To her, Vancouver's assumptions are flawed.
Everywhere you look, there's cranes in the air. There's land assembly signs. Drive down anywhere where they're not land assembly signs. And my favorite, the orange mesh fence of death.
More than any other candidate, Hardwick's election is about stopping the direction Vancouver is going down, canceling the Vancouver plan, canceling the Broadway plan, and canceling lobbying for a SkyTrain line to UBC in favor of light rail and neighborhood consultations.
It's perpetuating a business model that is not in the best interests of the people of the city or in the region. You've got to ask yourself, why are we doing this?
If Colleen Hardwick is stopping Vancouver's path and Kennedy Stewart is full steam ahead, Ken Sim is hoping voters will see him as the sweet spot.
There are a lot of good things going on in the city, and we have amazing people at City Hall. They're just working in a broken process right now.
A lot has changed in the last 4 years, but a lot hasn't. Ken Sim is still running for mayor and still hoping to defeat Kennedy Stewart.
And I think the big distinction between the mayor and myself is the fact that we actually believe in listening to the public and engaging them in the process.
Sim promises to speed up permit times, hire 100 new cops and nurses, and more or less stick to the status quo on housing. If there's a knock against him, it's that his specifics on how he'll achieve promises, like where he'll cut so he can hire 100 cops without raising taxes, are sometimes vague.
Is it ambitious? Absolutely. But when you compare it to the mayor's plan to hire 25 councillors, or Councillor Hardwick's plan to hire a commissioner and study the issue, those aren't bold actions, and we have serious safety issues in our streets.
These are all critiques of how Vancouver has been run the last 4 years. And with the price of housing up and more people on the streets, the current mayor knows it's a tough campaign.
I wouldn't say the last few years are pretty good.
But Stewart is hoping voters agree with him that it's been due to forces out of his control, a global pandemic, and a minority council where it was tough to pass legislation. It's why he's not running as an independent like 4 years ago, but with a team.
I mean, you've seen lots of those council debates, amendment after amendment and points of order. So to have 6 people with me is going to make a big, big difference on accelerating the stuff that I really wanted to do, but just could not get.
That means more housing and hiring more mental health workers instead of more police officers, arguing his rivals have the wrong approach on the downtown east side.
And that's been the debate so far. It's like, who can arrest the most homeless people? And it just makes me very, it upsets me a lot.
But many people are upset about tent encampments, home prices, and much, much more. If they split their votes, though, next Saturday, Stewart could win again as the only significant candidate on the left. But with the ballot this long, it's just one of many choices Vancouverites will have to contend with as they decide who makes up the next City Hall. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, are you always trying to find ways to get more loyalty points? If so, you're not alone. It turns out more Canadians are changing the way they shop. And as Yasmin Gandam reports, it's all in an effort to cut costs as food prices rise.
Anything from items at the grocery store and filling up at the pumps will cost you more amid record inflation, and Canadians are doing what they can to cut costs. Whether it's rewards from credit card companies like CIBC or from stores like No Frills and Save On Foods, Canadians are turning to loyalty programs as a way to bump up their purchasing power.
And that's led by the Optimum card in Canada. That would be the #1. That's the benchmark in Canada, and it's been very successful. And other grocers are starting to actually build their loyalty based, I guess, or their loyalty programs.
But coping with rising food inflation is not as simple as finding new strategies to save. Some cost-saving measures are quite extreme.
24% of people in BC and Alberta are actually buying less food. And sometimes actually they're skipping food.
Retail analysts say some Canadians are also choosing to make it a one-stop shop for all their needs.
So instead of buying from, 2 or 3 grocery stores, they're saying, how can I get the most out of my loyalty points by buying everything from one grocery store?
But Winder says loyalty programs can be problematic for consumers as they become accustomed to one store, and the loyalty program may not be worth it, that they may be paying more just to get points.
Look around and see if you can get a better loyalty program through another store or another credit card, because people are hungry. Companies are hungry now for your loyalty. So, shop around, I guess is what I'm saying.
Even if costs come down, he thinks these loyalty programs are here to stay, and they're built into the costs at the store. He warns if you're not a member, you might be paying more than you need to. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, it's a Thanksgiving bird alert for anyone heading across the border to save a little money this holiday-long weekend. The federal government reminding turkey lovers there are restrictions on bringing raw poultry from the U.S. into Canada. The agency says several states and provinces continue to experience outbreaks of bird flu or H5N1, a virus that spreads quickly among turkeys and chickens. Ready-to-eat and fully cooked poultry products are, however, allowed across the Canada-U.S. border. Well, to help with a labor shortage, the government will now allow international students to work more than a maximum of 20 hours a week.
This means that more than 500,000 international students who are already here in Canada are going to be eligible to work more if they choose to do so.
The immigration minister also introducing a pilot program for those students to automatically extend their study permits online. He says it's aimed at reducing backlogs. Okay, Metro Vancouver is warning residents of extreme fire risk ahead of the long weekend. It's unprecedented danger for this time of year. Metro Vancouver has had to deal with a forest fire in Minikata Park all week long. That one was declared under control yesterday, and last night a fire was detected at Balcarra Regional Park near White Pine Beach. Port Moody Fire and Rescue were able to knock that one down before it spread. It is considered suspicious, though, and officials say that restrictions that are usually dropped by October are still in place.
Campfires and briquette barbecues are prohibited, and smoking is only allowed in designated areas in our regional parks. Even the smallest heat source can spark a major fire.
The Minikata Park fire was a stubborn one to get under control, and that park remains closed this weekend. Johanna's off tonight. Kuljeet Kaila is here. Yeah, I think, Kuljeet, we're used to this time of year where we can just bundle up and we're not thinking about fire hazard at all.
At all. We're outdoors. We've got fires going, but not the case right now. The fire danger warning still in extreme and high in some parts of BC, especially for the south coast, on Vancouver Island as well. And that's where some of those temperatures are still warmer than usual temperatures for this time of year. We do have a little bit of good news, though. The air quality advisory has been lifted for eastern Fraser Valley as of just about 40 minutes ago or so. And that's because of this wind that's been pushing things a little east and clearing the air quality up. So some good news there. What we're going to see in the next couple of days is the high ridge pressure sitting on top of the lower mainland and the south coast, bringing in, keeping all that heat in. It won't be until Monday or Wednesday that we're going to see a low pressure system come in, bringing a little bit of rain for central BC and for the rest of Vancouver. Temperatures tomorrow still in the high 20s. For Abbotsford, it's going to be quite warm. The average for this time of year, 15. We hit 25 inland, just to give you an idea. And tomorrow's forecast still pretty hot and warm in some areas, 19 in Prince George, 21 in Williams Lake, and overnight it'll cool down to 16 if you can call that a cool down. 22 degrees for tomorrow, and it's going to be a sunny start to the weekend. I'll let you know what the rest of the week looks like coming up.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Let's go to Hope, BC now, the birthplace of Hollywood North. 40 years ago, this small community got its starring role alongside Sylvester Stallone in the Hollywood blockbuster First Blood.
If you want some friendly advice, a haircut and take a bath. You wouldn't get hassled so much.
Back then, it was known as Hope, Washington. That's when the town served as the fictional setting for the iconic action movie First Blood, which kicked off the Rambo franchise starring Stallone. Now, the movie was released 40 years ago this month, and the town is going all out to mark the occasion. Tonight, our Liam Britton is live in Hope, joining in the fun. You've been hunting down this story like a certain Green Beret, haven't you? What's been happening there, Liam?
Yeah, that's right. Just like the gas station at the climax of the iconic movie, this town is exploding with excitement. First Blood, very well-loved action film. The flick's got, combat, stunts, but also themes of obsession and war trauma and America's role in Vietnam. And, Hope is kind of one of the stars of this town. Townsfolk will certainly tell you that. Over this weekend, they're offering walking tours, prop shows, arts displays, a lot more. Tracy Painter is with the Tourism Authority, and she says people are coming from all over, including to Mountain View Brewing, where the prop show is on display.
It's important not just to the people of Hope, but to the fans all over the world. They're who keep this movie alive, and they keep coming back to this town because they love the movie, they love this town, and that's why we keep doing this.
And hey, you know that giant statue of Sylvester Stallone in the middle of town? The carver of that statue, Ryan Villiers, is in town making a companion piece, a giant Rambo head. And it could be yours as a raffle prize. He says the town's love of this movie is absolutely incredible.
Oh, Hope is the culture of Rambo. It's pretty insane to see. It's awesome to see. 40 years now, they're celebrating it, and it's just, the legacy lives on.
Yeah, that statue's the one behind you there, right, Liam? I think that's what you're talking about. Okay, so there are plenty of action movies out there. Why has this one stuck with fans so much? Also, this is probably the part where I have to tell you that I haven't actually seen Rambo.
Anita, it's like never looking on the Mona Lisa if the Mona Lisa was like awesome and violent. Well, people in town love this movie because it's kind of the first big action movie that was filmed here, and their town is front and center. Really proud of this one. So if anyone, even if you haven't seen it, is looking to celebrate the movie, there's a lot more planned. A big medal show tonight. Some of the actors from the film, not Sylvester Stallone, unfortunately, are coming tomorrow. And apparently on Sunday, a tank is going to come to town and crush a bunch of cars. So to paraphrase a certain Green Beret, nothing is over, including this town's love of First Blood. Anita?
And I think you have a lot of love there too, Liam. Are you going to hang out there this weekend?
Well, I mean, the medal show is right behind me, so this is pretty convenient.
All right, well, have a wonderful time. The CBC's Liam Britton in Hope for us tonight. Another day, another sponsor fleeing Hockey Canada. We speak to a former NHL player on what should happen next. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. A Cold War-era jet aircraft known as the Tbird has found a new home at the Air Force Museum of Alberta as part of its Cold War exhibit. Now, the aircraft served the Royal Canadian Air Force and Canadian Forces for more than 5 decades, with roles ranging from advanced pilot training to transport.
I flew with 38 guys that died in the Cold War, and guys that were close to me, guys I flew with every day. So it was important for us guys that are doing it now to tell that story. This plane still belongs to the Department of National Defense and was on exhibit at the Cold Lake Museum, and they felt they had no more requirement to keep this aircraft, and so we wanted it here. And in fact, I want 3 airplanes to come down, which represent the NORAD side of the participation in the Cold War.
At present, the Cold War exhibit, we have 3 aircraft, the F-86 Sabre, the CF-104, and the F-18 Hornet. And those were the aircraft that flew in Europe during the Cold War, and we wanted to complete our exhibit The 3 aircraft that we're looking to get are the T-33, the CF-100, and the CF-101. Those are the aircraft that flew in Canada during the Cold War, and this is our first step in getting the T-33.
This aircraft was developed by Lockheed Industries from the United States right at the end of World War II. It was a transition fighter to go from the propeller-type aviation era into the jet aviation era. And so Canada built 656 of these T-33 aircraft, and they started production in 1952. And that aircraft remained in the Canadian service until 2005. Canada primarily used the T-33 as a training aircraft.
Our motto in this whole museum is preserve, remember, and educate and make sure that people understand exactly the sacrifices that the Royal Canadian Air Force made as part and parcel of NATO and in the Cold War itself.
Welcome back. More high-profile sponsors are cutting ties with Hockey Canada as the pressure grows on the organization to change its leadership. Nike is one of the latest companies to suspend with Hockey Canada, adding to a list that includes Canadian Tire and Esso parent company Imperial Oil. TELUS and Tim Hortons all have already suspended or cut funding. And in May, it was revealed Hockey Canada paid an undisclosed settlement to a woman who alleges she was sexually assaulted by 8 players. Hockey Ontario, Hockey Quebec, and Hockey Nova Scotia have all stopped supporting the national governing body over the past week. For insight into the future of Hockey Canada and what needs to be done, I'm joined by Corey Hirsch, former NHL and Team Canada goalie and color commentator for the Vancouver Canucks. Corey, you know, every single day there's more pressure, whether it's companies, provinces cutting ties, yet leadership at Hockey Canada has dug in its heels. Why do you think there's such a refusal here to resign?
Well, and that's the question on everybody's mind. I understand that it's not an individual's fault for what's going on and happens. But hey, captain goes down with the ship, right? You're part of the problem. You're part of the solution. You got to understand that, hey, it's time. This is serious stuff. This isn't, a little deal. This is a big, major thing in sport, and especially in hockey. And I bleed Hockey Canada colors. You guys know that. I mean, I was in the Olympics and everything. But to watch what's going on and just dragging it through the mud right now, hockey is a great game. It's a great sport. I don't want people to lose faith in hockey. However, we need new leadership at Hockey Canada, and it's time that people stepped aside that haven't gotten the job done.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that a little bit more about that faith. There's a lot of talk about hockey culture being toxic. Do you think that this is making that reputation worse?
Well, it's a reputation that isn't deserved, let's be honest. I mean, yes, there's some things that have happened, but the teams that I played on were incredible. I know incredible people that have out through the game, so let's not blame hockey itself. If there's individuals that are doing things that aren't correct and are irresponsible, well, they need to be punished appropriately. But the game itself is a great game. It taught me resilience, strength. I'm a mental health advocate. The game has taught me the things that I'm able to do today. However, without new leadership and new programs so that we prevent these things from happening, that's where people lose faith, because this stuff is unacceptable and it can't happen any longer.
As people watch, Nike and all of the provinces starting to slowly pull and cut their ties with Hockey Canada, how do you think the organization can restore faith from players and parents and fans?
Bring in new people. Bring in people that know what they're doing. Bring in people like Sheldon Kennedy that knows how to about respect and sexual conduct. Bring in people that know about mental health. It's one thing the X's and O's on the ice, but that's not what the game is about. That might be on the ice, but there's so much around it off the ice that we need to fix and that we need to address, and it hasn't been addressed, or it hasn't been addressed appropriately because we still have these issues. So, in my opinion, hey, thank you for your service and thank you for trying to do your best job at Hockey Canada, but it didn't work. We need new programs. We need new leadership. It's time to step aside so that we can restore faith in hockey and in a great game. The game is what it's supposed to be. It's a great game. Don't lose faith in it.
Do you think, though, that these people in leadership are going to leave anytime soon, given that they haven't done so with all of this pressure?
I don't understand how they can't, because there's not going to be anything left. They're not going to be able to run the program. And if they do, people who are probably going to end up starting another program somewhere else, right? That people do have faith in. So the pressure's on, and I don't understand if it's arrogance, if what it is. But, the pressure is going to be too immense that they're going to have to step aside and let other people give their chance at doing a better job than what Hockey Canada has done so far.
Corey Hirsch is a former NHL and Team Canada goalie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ottawa is taking aim at Iran. The sanctions and what the federal government hopes it will achieve is next.
Area police are looking into a Thanksgiving threat. An animal rights group claims to have poisoned turkeys at 3 major supermarket chains. Turkeys that were quickly removed and replaced. Eve Savory reports.
Within hours of the threat, fresh turkeys that could not have been tampered with, had been delivered to Safeway and to customers. A turkey consultant was there to reassure, but customers generally seemed more annoyed than concerned.
It's crazy. What a waste.
I'm going to buy a turkey regardless. It's not going to make me buy a turkey, but it's not going to make me not buy a turkey either.
I don't know. I think they're crazy. And every year I heard this kind of stories. It's terrible.
The letter had been sent to media outlets. It was titled Death on the Menu. Said turkeys at Safeway, Save On Foods and IGA had been poisoned. Murder, it said, will beget murder. And those participating in unthinking carnage will soon be examining the consequences of their actions, preferably around an open grave.
It diverts very valuable resources of the RCMP into something which is probably a hoax. And
it had happened before, but then it was the Christmas bird in 1994. Thousands of turkeys were pulled off the shelf, but since then stores have been much more cautious.
Since the turkey scare of 1994, we have increased security precautions in the stores.
No poisons were ever found in the birds in the 1994 case, and Vancouver police say they have no specific suspects. What's more, police are not sure the two threats are even connected. Eve Savory, CBC News, Vancouver.
Ottawa is taking new aim at the Iranian regime tonight and its powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Canadian government has been under pressure to do more after the death of a young woman in Iran last month. That sparked weeks of protest across this country and around the world, seeming to lead to new sanctions announced today. But some protesters are disappointed that the Prime Minister isn't going further. Rafi Boudjikanian explains the significance of not designating the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization.
In Montreal, a show of support for protesters in Iran.
I'm very proud of my Iranian brothers and sisters for doing such a brave job of protesting every day.
Protesters in Canada are looking for government action, but last Saturday the Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister failed to attend a rally near Toronto. The leader of the opposition did and spoke before thousands.
Our government will list the IRGC as a banned terrorist organization in Canada.
The IRGC is a powerful military and political faction in Iran. Labeling it a terrorist organization is exactly what many are calling for, as they did again 3 days later in Ottawa.
We do need to do more, and we will do more.
Today's sanctions target that group in particular. 10,000 of its senior leaders will be barred from Canada, and $76 million will go towards seizing and freezing their assets.
We're using the most powerful tools at our disposal to crack down on this brutal regime.
A lot of anger was building within the Iranian Canadian community. I think this was a response to that. It doesn't go far enough, and I don't think it recognizes the sheer monstrosity of this organization.
But some argue there is some value in today's announcement.
What I think we can take some comfort in today is hearing, particularly the Deputy Prime Minister, talking in very clear terms about how the government sees the Iranian regime, that they're calling it very clearly a terrorist regime.
The opposition says these measures fall short. The government says it will have more to announce next week. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Canadian economy gained 21,000 jobs in September, but the number of people looking for work shrank, so the unemployment rate fell only slightly from August to 5.2%. There were more jobs in education, healthcare, public service, and social assistance, but fewer in manufacturing, information and culture, and recreation. Year over year, wages were up a bit. The average hourly wage of employees is now $31.67. Celebrating 50 years of consumer protection, the CBC's Marketplace takes a look at its big wins. That's next.
Remember that time your friend said, "Oh, I'm just so tired. The Venice Biennale was exhausting." And your uncle was like, "What's a biennaler?" And you stopped speaking to both of them forever. I'm Professor Lee's Not Really a Professor, and this is Art 101, Not Really a Class. And I'm here to clear up this Venice Biennaler business right now. What is this word, and what does it mean, and how do you pronounce it? And why is it such a big deal? The word biennale itself is pretty simple. It's Italian, and it just means every other year. Why does your friend say it in such an irritating way? Think of what Cannes or Sundance are for film, or what the Olympics is for sports. That's pretty much what the Venice Biennale means for art. As in, it's too expensive for most of us to ever get there, it's fun for a lot of celebrities to wander around, and most of the art will never make it to your town. But the Venice Biennale is part of a tradition, like the Olympics or Cannes, of countries showing off their best, in this case, their best art. The Venice Biennale goes back to 1895. That first one broke off into separate festivals for theater, cinema, music, and later on architecture and dance. But the Venice Biennale of Art still rules them all. Here's how the whole thing works. In a park in the city called the Giardini, most participating countries have their own pavilion. Canada's looks sort of like a cabin in the woods. Each country chooses an artist or artists to represent it, and that artist gets to use their country's pavilion in the way that best suits their work. In 2017, artist Jeffrey Farmer took advantage of the fact that the Canadian pavilion was about to be restored and made his installation look like it was spilling out through the missing walls and roof. He was casting light on the idea that Canada's pavilion at the Biennale is not a permanent thing, and that it was built with World War II reparation money, paying respect to the lost lives of men and women. So what does this have to do with your everyday life? Who a country picks to represent them at an art fair this huge says something about what the country is thinking about, or what image they're trying to project to the world. In 2005, performance artist Rebecca Belmore represented Canada at the Biennale, and the video she made called Fountain offered the perspective of an Indigenous woman and pointed to the importance in Canada of water and accountability. In 2017, the group show at the Chinese Pavilion focused on the idea that contemporary artists in China are looking back to old traditions and carrying them into the future. At the 2019 Venice Biennale, artist collective Isuma will be representing Canada. It'll be the first time that Inuit artists are our pick for the Biennale, and they'll add an important vision of our North to this huge international art fair. So, sure, the Venice Biennale is a bit inside baseball, but it's an important part of our artistic culture, even though it's far away. It's still a place where every 2 years, countries, including Canada, have something to say about what they value, and art plays a leading role in representing culture. So obviously, you and your uncle should go, and you can watch him call it the Bean Yaller at all the parties, there are a lot of parties, and pass out drunk near a canal. See you next time for more Art 101.
BC Votes 2022. Housing, safety, transportation, and climate change. What do the next 4 years look like? Watch CBC News and stay informed at cbc.ca/BC Votes. Time now to check in with Kuljeet Kaila for this weather, this crazy weather we've been having, but also you're looking at an advisory that's been lifted.
Just about an hour or so ago, less than an hour ago, the air quality advisory canceled for parts of the Fraser Valley. So it's cleared out through there, still seeing some air quality issues closer to Osoyoos. So we're not really out of the woods yet, but the air quality in the Fraser Valley will be a lot better. Temperatures were way above seasonal, up to 8 to 10 degrees warmer in all of these places across BC, from Port Alberni right to the valley, up to 27 degrees above seasonal. Forecast daily highs across BC were high, 26 in Kelowna, 28 at Port Alberni, but also take a look at Alberta, 20 degrees in Edmonton, 21 in Calgary. So they're seeing much of what we're seeing as well in terms of highs across the provinces. Current temperatures outside right now, 23 in Pitt Meadows, 23 out in Abbotsford, 16 degrees will be the low overnight for the weekend. Lots of sunshine in store, highs up to 22 degrees for Saturday and Sunday. It's not until Monday we start to see a bit of a low pressure system roll through and hopefully bring some rain with it. Right now sitting at 60%, and then right back to sunshine again and highs into the 20s for the end of the week. 22 for Wednesday being the warmest of the days. Anita?
All right, thanks, Kuljeet.
You're welcome.
A new season of Marketplace kicks off tonight. CBC's investigative consumer show is marking 50 years on the air. Tonight, this 1-hour special looks at some of the greatest highlights and connects with the first co-host of the show. David Common offers us an early peek.
Okay, ready to fly.
In 3, 2, 1.
Fly them. All set for a brand new season. I'm very excited about it.
So am I. Harry Brown is my new co-host. I'm Joan Watson. Welcome to Marketplace.
What a way to kick off a TV show.
Tonight on Marketplace.
Marketplace.
Marketplace began in 1972, a consumer investigative show that would endure. And with a woman as host of a network TV program back then, Joan Watson was a trailblazer.
That is the converted Simca with the modified safety features on it. It will be pulled on a cable from an engine way up the other end of the track, come down here, and go on impact up there to the barrier and hit it.
5 decades on, we're in Halifax to find the Marketplace original.
Hello, David.
Very good to meet you.
My pleasure.
Joan is now 90 and sharp as they get.
I'm one of the current hosts.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It wasn't official until you're welcome.
And Joan remembers what motivated their work.
The inequity of some situations that young families found themselves in, things they couldn't afford, places they couldn't go, kids they couldn't educate. And usually we could do something. That was the great part about it. We made change.
Joan would go on to shape the program and stay as host for a decade.
We actually have something for you. We have a check.
Driven by a desire to be an advocate for the average person.
But you're not going to talk about them?
Not today, I'm not.
Gosh, you've missed a good chance, Mr. Lawrence.
You'll be back, I know.
You're right.
You broke a barrier in many ways by being not just the first host of Marketplace, but a woman who was a host at a time not many women were hosts of TV programs.
That was quite true, and I got a kick out of it. It was lots of fun.
What was it that most excited you about being on the program?
When change started to happen as a consequence of Marketplace, that's when my flag went up, and I got a big kick out of it.
Tell me, what do you think of luncheon meats now?
I was really surprised to find out that how bad these luncheon meats are that we find out that you can buy on the supermarket.
Marketplace has evolved in the years since.
I haven't been diving in a few years.
I'm told this is what it's going to take to get a job.
What is it that they're doing?
They're sexualizing women.
Taking on a wider array of investigations.
We're launching a new special series about Canadians from coast to coast calling out discrimination.
Good evening. I'm Joan Watson.
But it's built on the foundation Joan laid out 50 years on.
This is Marketplace.
David Common, CBC News, Halifax.
You can watch the full 1-hour Marketplace 50th anniversary special tonight at 8 p.m. on CBC TV and CBC Gem. Ahoy! There be snakes at sea. Rare footage of garter snakes hunting in the Georgia Strait is next.
Step 3, shape your loom. I'm Wayland Snowshoe, and I'm a soapstone carver. I'm from Fort McPherson, Northwest Territories, and I'm a Gwich'in, and then I moved off to Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's where I discovered carving. I've been carving for about 6 years. I'm doing it full-time for a year and a half, and now I get to host workshops all over the place.
It's fun. I like it. One of my friend's moms just sent it to my mom, and then I was just interested.
It's a 3-day workshop, and every day we talk about different life lessons.
Today we just drew a whole bunch of loons, and then once we were all done, we came out here. We just played like a little game, and then we drew it on the soapstone or whatever it's called. We just drew it right back on there, cut it basically like with the thing, and then we're just sanding it now, really.
Once you have patience, you could pretty much do anything, because patience is very important. That's what leads into, if you're impatient, it leads into a lot of frustration. The workshop is pretty much just a big story. It's a story of my life, my carving journey. So yeah, I went through a little bit of bullying and stuff, and kind of made me kind of like, my confidence were low, and you know, suffered anxieties and stuff. So after having my child and then getting into the art industry, art really built my confidence up, and started falling in love with carving. So even though I was making so many mistakes off the start, it was keeping my mind busy, and it was something that I started that I didn't want to quit. So I kept carving. It was a rewarding feeling at the end. So I continued on and started another piece and kept working. And after the 4th piece, I told myself one day I'll do this full time, and I decided that I wanted to try to bring this to kids, to youth all over, and boost their confidence and just focus on positive mental health, building that. So eventually you're going to get to your goal, but sometimes we try to jump too far ahead, you know, we miss the goal and become frustrated and angry. And so I try to teach the kids that the importance of taking smaller steps and then using the creativity in their life. Sometimes we have a tough problem that we're having a hard time finding an answer to. And focus, we just learn to focus on our goal and block out any kind of distractions that might try to stop us. Sometimes there's people that might say, well, maybe just do your carving as a hobby, but I stuck with what I wanted to do, and I blocked that out, so I became a full-time carver. So I try to teach kids that there's always solutions to your problems. Sometimes you do have to think outside the box. I'm happy for the Inuvik Native Band to take a little bit of belief in my business, and I'm excited to continue on and continue making snowshoe carvings grow a little more. So.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver Inbox.
The Chutzpah Festival is back November 3rd to 24th with an exciting lineup of performances including concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Visit chutzpahfestival.com for tickets and more info. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox and keep connected with us.
Around the world, BC is known for its wildlife. Many tourists flock to our province to see animals such as whales, bears, and eagles. But our province is also home to a remarkable and often overlooked variety of amphibians and reptiles. Conservationist and filmmaker Ryan Wilkes and fellow conservationist and wildlife educator Connell Bradwell went searching for these charismatic critters.
Hello, I'm Connell. And I'm Ryan. And today I'm really excited because we're talking all about reptiles and amphibians.
And BC is home to a wide range of incredible and misunderstood reptile and amphibian species. They're found right across the province and sometimes in places that you wouldn't expect.
I've loved reptiles for as long as I can remember. And I think what draws me to them and what fascinates me most about them is how they continually surprise me with the places that they exist and inhabit, and also the amazing adaptations they've developed to thrive all over the world. Today, I've come to this coastal grassland to look for garter snakes. So I've just been looking around this grassland area, seeing if I can find any snakes. And when I was walking along the cliff, I saw one just head down towards the beach. So we're gonna go down there and see if we can find out what it's up to. Wow, I honestly can't believe what I'm seeing right now. These snakes are swimming into the water. You know, they've come down from the grasslands up above, across the beach, over the kelp, and into the ocean. And they're diving and kind of slinking and slithering their way through the kelp beds. And they're actually really beautiful swimmers. It's incredible to see. They're holding their breath for up to a number of minutes at a time before they're poking their heads back up above water to take stock of what's around them and get prepared to dive again.
Although landlocked populations of garter snakes are known to hunt in freshwater, relatively little is known about their coastal counterparts. But this kelp foraging behavior does seem to be unique to garter snakes that live along the Salish Sea. When you see a snake flicking their tongue like this, they are essentially tasting the air. Garter snakes have poor eyesight and rely heavily on their excellent senses of taste and smell to navigate, locate prey, and identify possible predators. When they catch a fish, like this gunnel, they bring it out of the water, and their mildly venomous saliva helps to paralyze their prey before swallowing it whole. Their bottom jaws are separated into two halves, so they can even swallow prey larger than their own heads, like this one.
So it's pretty late in the afternoon now, and I've spent all day chasing snakes around the intertidal zone on this beach. For me, life doesn't really get any better than this. I would have been totally satisfied just hanging out, watching them swim in the kelp beds all day. But to be able to witness hunting behavior from a species that isn't known to typically hunt in saltwater environments was really, really cool and something that I'll never forget.
So one of the most common reptile species that we have here on southern Vancouver Island is the European wall lizard. And on a hot day like today, we're seeing them all over the place.
As the name suggests, European wall lizards aren't native here in BC. They're an invasive species whose population has exploded across this part of Vancouver Island. Although their true impact on the ecosystem has not been well studied, invasive species do often have serious consequences on native reptiles and amphibians. We see this with other species, from bullfrogs to red-eared slider turtles, which often came from released pets.
So just because they're a non-native species doesn't mean we can't appreciate them. I absolutely love seeing them hunting, where they dart around after insects. They're so fast. We just need to make sure that we don't release any more non-native species into the environment.
Now that we've shown you 2 reptiles, we're going to show you 2 amphibian species that are native to BC.
Hey Ryan.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the difference between amphibians and reptiles?
Definitely. So the way that I like to remember the difference between amphibians and reptiles are that amphibians are slimy and reptiles are scaly. Also, amphibians are born with gills, whereas reptiles are born with lungs. But as expected with nature, there are some exceptions to this rule.
I found one.
This adorable little critter is the western redback salamander. Now, while the majority of amphibians lay eggs in water, these little rule breakers lay their eggs on the forest floor. This makes them truly terrestrial, spending their whole lives on land. They lay their eggs in kind of like little nests, which they bury and hide. Western redback salamanders are found on forested slopes of Vancouver Island and the lower mainland of BC. They're most active in wet weather and love eating everything from spiders to worms. They even communicate with each other through scent markings. So if they want to know if another salamander's using their log, well, they just give it a sniff.
These salamanders are absolutely prolific in this forest. We found over 20 of them in just a couple of hours of searching, which I wasn't expecting at all. I also wasn't expecting them to be so cute. Individuals find moist microhabitats to hang out in, something like this. So they do this in order to maintain hydration, which is essential for absorbing oxygen through their skin.
All amphibians are what we call indicator species. This means that they are particularly sensitive to environmental change, and a decrease in their population can warn us of potential concerns in their ecosystems.
There are 10 species of frog in BC, but only 2 of them are tree frogs.
The most common tree frog in BC is the Pacific tree frog. They grow to a maximum of 5 centimeters long and are camouflage experts, so don't worry if you've never seen one. Pacific tree frogs are able to change the color of their skin, and the possibilities range from a dull brown to a bright green. The color change is caused by variations in temperature and humidity, and the frogs have no control over the change. My favorite thing about these frogs is their feet. They have little sticky pads on each toe to allow them to efficiently climb on just about any surface in the forest.
So Connell, this has been quite different than your usual birding adventures. What have you thought of it?
I am fully converted. I absolutely love the reptiles and the amphibians. I hadn't expected this to be as amazing as it was, and yeah, I'm a little bit obsessed with them now.
Yeah, and to think like we've only scratched the surface.
I kind of want to keep going and looking for more. I'm gonna go find more. See you later. Finish the video.
Yeah, not sure I want to have an encounter with any of those creatures at all, but they are cute in some ways. Okay, moving on, we have all doodled on the side of a page, right? But a British artist has taken the hobby to a whole new level, his house.
It's just such a great process. You feel almost like an out-of-body experience. You're just indulging yourself in this free-flowing state.
Sam Cox, aka Mr. Doodle, has covered every part of his home with art, from the walls and floors to, everything. Everything in his bedroom, his bathroom. His busy marker pen has spared few surfaces across the 12 rooms. And if decorating indoors wasn't enough, wow, look at that. The artist found time and energy to tackle the outside too. Cox says he has spent 2 years to complete his project, That calls for a well-deserved break for sure. Now, here I am trying to teach my daughter not to draw on walls at all. To each their own, I suppose. Not for me. That's it for CBC Vancouver News tonight. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend.